Okay, so I'm recording this, but I'm going to write on the board some things here and just show you a way of doing a calculation. And this is based on the idea of ratio and proportion. A ratio is merely a comparison of two numbers of their relative. And so they're similar fractions, except that we state them differently. But we can treat them as those as well. So the fraction 2/3 is composed of a numerator and a denominator. The numerator is the top number. A fraction is a number of parts of a whole. The denominator, the bottom number, tells you the total number of parts in this fraction, in this case, thirds, 3 1/3. The numerator tells you how many of those parts you have. Okay? Another way of looking at the relationship between numbers is to compare the relative magnitude of those numbers. And we do that with the ratio. The ratio is written as 2, or 2/3, is written as 2 colon 3 is read as 2 to 3. The relative magnitude. Now you all know that if I take this fraction and multiply both numerator and denominator by the same factor, I'm going to have a fraction that has the same relative value as the original. So if I multiply this times 3/3, I'm going to get 6/9. This fraction, 2/3, then equals 6/9 because, of course, we can reduce that by simply dividing each of the numerators. So that is an equation. An equation is a mathematical expression that there is with an equal sign. And whatever is to the left of an equal sign is exactly the same, although stated differently, than what is to the right. So here, 2/3 equals 6/9. Okay, they're the same number. Well, ratios are the same way. If we do the same thing here and create another ratio of 6:9, we can say what we call a proportion. Proportion is okay. So we do that 2:3, and we put a double colon, 6:9. We read that 2:3 as 6:9. Now, in many ways, we can also say 2:3 equals 6:9. It's the same as an equation. This is the basis for all dosage calculations in the pharmacy. Why do I say that? Well, the reason we think of fractions as something that has to have numbers. Ratios don't. In the pharmacy, we can say that we have a bottle of medicine, and it's medicine A, 25 milligram tablets. That's written on the label, the name, the dosage form, and how much drug is in that, each of those individual doses. You see that all the time. You see it when you have your Tylenol at home. Your Tylenol comes in, if you have extra strength, it comes in 500 milligram tablets, or maybe capsules. Okay? So we can say 25 milligrams is to tablet. That's a ratio. So we're comparing each tablet. So if our dose is 50 milligrams, that's pretty obvious that then we have to take 2 25 milligram tablets. But we can set this up. Let's just say that we are having a little brain infarct. I can't remember how to divide. We can also say 25 milligrams is the tablet, as 50 milligrams is to X, X being a number of tablets. Okay. Now remember, I said that this is the same as saying 25 milligrams is the tablet equals 50 milligrams is to X. And what I want you to remember is that we can now convert this into fractions. So we've got 25 milligrams over tablet equals 50 milligrams over X. X being what we're trying to do. It's going to be the number. So now, most of you remember, I think, your high school algebra. Right. We cross multiply. Next step, we get 25 milligrams times X equals 50 milligrams times tablet.
I'm going to make for you shank you. Don't ask. Keep talking.
So, right, remember. Okay.
Here's your answer.
Yes.
No, because I don't know what. No.
Yes. Do it. I'm not punishing you. I'm allowing you to show your chops here.
I am not. I don't know what 50 divided by 25 equals.
You don't.
No. That's what? Okay.
Two tablets.
There you go. Times is 25 bonus. 2. I don't think of that one.
Okay. So, it's not 2 milligrams, it's 2 tablets. Okay. But yes, you remember that from your basic algebra in high school. In what class?
Computer.
Oh, COM 103, computerized systems?
So.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, we have to do that. Yeah, there you learn how to use the computerized system. Please.
I'd be straight up honest, I am not gonna be good at math. Be like honest with you, because I never went to math class in high school. I can do that and not guarantee the right answer. But I'll show my work how to get it. I really did not.
Okay,
I was one of those teachers in high school. I never went.
okay. Well,
At least I'm honest.
yeah, you will have to do more math. You probably don't know your schedule are you taking? Farm
Insurance
208,
specialist and principles of pharmacy technology.
DHR 208. He's
Yeah.
teaching it?
208 and 211.
Okay.
Yeah, 211.
Okay. Yeah, that'll be, we'll be very interested in seeing how that goes. This class is very different from what Bill is teaching. Because, well, it's just one three things happening in class. So this is part of the new sequence class. So what, no problem, Kelly. So really, I just want to go through a couple of these things. This is the basis for everything. All we're doing is multiplying and dividing. You don't need to be afraid of this. If you need more practice, well, that's fine. We can arrange for that. It's not an issue. And practice is what people become comfortable with math by doing. Because it really is pretty straightforward. So let's take a look at the conversion using these same basic principles. Okay. Let's look at one of the problems in last week's assignment. Was how many liters how many milliliters are in 45.45 liters? You probably all remember that. Okay. But let's go back and look at our conversion rubric. Okay. Our conversion rubric gave us liters, milliliters, with a factor of 1,000, meaning that there are 1,000 milliliters in a liter. Let's write that down. 1,000 milliliters per liter as a fraction. We can also make it a ratio. So that's going to equal X over 45.45, number of milliliters in that many liters. Okay. So the way to do it is set it up. It doesn't matter if you say 1 liter in 1,000 milliliters equals 45.45 liters over X. As long as the liters are either both liters are numerators or denominators. That's the key, setting it up. Okay. Either way, we solve this. How? Cross multiply. So we multiply that way. So we have 45.45 liters times 1,000 milliliters equals X times liter. Right? We divide first by the liter to get rid of that. Remember, anything we divide on both sides of the equation. So now we have 45.45 times 1,000 milliliters equals X. So we either pull out our calculator or we do it in our head. if you really are not happy trying to do math in your head, use your calculator. After you do enough of that, some of these simpler things will be second nature. So the answer here now is 45,450 milliliters equals X. Right? So you do your conversions in this way. Now, sometimes we have to give it some thought. Okay? Can I erase that? A problem that didn't appear on the quiz, but something related to one that did, is how many micrograms, remember that's mcg, in 3 grams. Okay? Now remember our rubric. We had gram, milligram, microgram. Okay? And the factor, the multiplier divided is above the arrow. And you multiply by the factors above each arrow. So in this case, we've got gram. We can set it up as several things, but we're going to do it in 2 steps to make it perhaps a little bit more obvious. So we have gram to microgram, and the factor is 1,000 times 1,000 because we're crossing 2 of these arrows, right? And we multiply by each arrow we cross. I don't care if you're crossing 12 arrows. You're going to multiply by the factor above each arrow. Okay? So this is a million. 1,000 times 1,000 is a million. Okay? So now we have 1 gram, 1 over 1 million micrograms equals 3 grams over X. And we solve for that. Right? Cross multiply, we've got 1 gram times X equals 1 million micrograms times 3 grams. So we get rid of the gram by dividing it out of each side, right? Make sense? Pardon? Okay, where?
Okay, I got as far as you're setting it up, but how did you get that last part?
Okay, we cross multiplied, same as for anything else. Okay, remember?
Oh, I see now. I get it. Okay,
Yeah,
sorry.
okay. So now we have X equals 1 million micrograms times 3, or 3 million micrograms. This works for everything. This method will have any conversion. And conversions are probably the one is going the wrong way. You know, the rubric left to right, you multiply by the amount on the zero, that's fine. Moving right and left is fine. But here, if we set it up this way, making certain that we have the proper unit on the, in this case, I make the grand numerator. Hello, Andy. And use that as a way to make sure that I have each fraction set up properly. And then you just solve. This way, if you make sure that you have it set up properly, you're not going to make a mistake. If you're troubled by the math, if the numbers are complicated, use your calculator. You'll always have a calculator available to you in a pharmacy or in a medical center. Always. We don't do it any other way. So, okay, questions?
Can you just the answer to that one?
Pardon?
Finish working out that last problem with your work, just to make sure I did it right.
Okay, 3 million micrograms and 3 grams.
That be wrong. If we just wrote like 3
Okay, a couple of things. A lot of times in the exam or in the quiz, they're going to have you basically filling in the form. And it's going to have the MCG on the front. That's the answer that's going to be. You put down, and then I'm going to.
You want us to write it out as put zeros?
I don't care. I don't care. Now, the issue is, and you said before, it has to be the right. There is no maybe in maybe if you guys end up but not in the pharmacy. In the pharmacy, there are a tremendous number of errors, disappointing, but the vast majority of them, because people check. They check their own calculation. They check the calculation. And so the actual number of errors that out of the but you have a pharmacist.
I never had to do that.
You just have to run it down. Yeah. But nonetheless, if you're working in the pharmacist, and quite frankly, again, this is about getting comfortable with it, and all you can do is every single day. So all of you can do it. So I'm not, I'm not concerned about your ability. I am concerned about your, and that's what practice does. I know all of you. So, yeah, you are. If you're not confident, then that's when errors come in. That's why. And that's why. And if you have a problem, if you're looking at something about doing calculations. You start developing a feel for what makes sense. And I will tell you right now, anytime you look at something, you say that doesn't look right. Don't dismiss that feeling. The chances are really, really high that you're correct and it isn't right. Because our instinct is really an important aspect. I have found in my life that every time I ignore my instinctive thinking on something, I'm wrong. Well, not every time, but most of the time. I should have listened. So anytime you look at something and say that, because it might very well be wrong. There's something in it that doesn't make sense. And if you look at it and go talk to Colin. Could you check this one? We work together cooperatively. We don't have trouble in our pharmacy. We're not alone. We're working with others. And our goal for all of us. So that's why we spend a lot of time on that. Making sure some of that was come out good. It's important for you to know that even though our computers in the pharmacy do most of these calculations, they're dependent on operating. And so what you want to do is be looking at numbers. You know, we calculated the number of tablets a minute ago for a dose. What if we ran through the calculation and our number came out to be 20? What would we think? Has anyone ever had a prescription where you took 20 tablets? You look at that and say, that doesn't. Then you go back and check. Part of this is the experience in the field. I have watched I used to recruit pharmacies for our externship program, our night externship program. So I went to a lot of pharmacies. And I used to watch the way the pharmacist would check a prescription that was filled by one of the techs. And they would look at the prescription, and you could see them thinking in their head, doing the calculation for what the prescription should be. And they pick up the bottle and simply look at it. And they could tell when something wasn't right. Because a bottle that's supposed to have 90 tablets, but only contains 45, looks very different. And it's experience, that's all. Experience and practice. So again, as I say, if you look at something and it doesn't look right, go back and check it, always. I keep being reminded of that. As I said, whenever, many times, I have had the feeling that something was wrong and that I should do a certain action to take care of it. And when I haven't, altogether too often, I have been wrong. I should have done so. That's a lesson that I seem to have a hard time learning. But, so questions about any of that? All right. Then let's and talk. Those of you who took time and here's what you yeah okay well good points. But the issue is we can't, we look at and it doesn't. Okay. I have to change things. Go find some. Come on. All right. I'm gonna bring up some stuff here. Okay. So in documentation, you all know, how many of you have taken the medical records classes? Okay. So you know that we have a lot of documentation. And a lot of this is required by insurance companies, Medicare, Medicaid, CMS. But we document a lot. And documentation is for what we do. We document every prescription we fill, for instance. We document if we are preparing, even in a community pharmacy, to a certain level of compound, because things like amoxicillin comes from pharmacy as a dry powder. We don't give dry powder to our patients. We reconstitute that amoxicillin according to a recipe for doing so. It gives us a very specific product that we can then send to patients. So we do some of that, but we keep records of everything we do. We keep records and we file claims using specific pharmacy claim form in order to be reimbursed by Medicare or Medicaid or insurance companies. Now, it used to be the documentation was very much a pain because every insurance company had its own claim form and you had to fill it out exactly. And then the government had its form, and Medicare had a different form for Medicaid because Medicaid is a state program. But we've really conformed a lot of that. Now we have a much better ability to file claims, but that hasn't reduced our documentation effort. And we document not just prescriptions that we fill, and document all the work we do to say reconstitute something like amoxicillin or any other drug that needs to be reconstituted. And we also have to keep records of our inventory, especially controlled substances. And I'm going to talk about what a controlled substance is after the break, but we'll go into that really. I'm going to talk a little bit more about other issues first. The documentation that we have falls under all of the HIPAA regulations. You've all had HIPAA thrown at you probably a dozen times already, so we're not going to go into what HIPAA is. We have that obligation to protect the protected health information, and that includes in the pharmacy all of our prescriptions, names of our clients, their insurance numbers, their Medicare numbers, and Medicare numbers used to be a minor variation on Social Security numbers. Now Medicare has gone to non-Social Security numbers for identification, which is way a daily and a dollar short as far as I'm concerned. But they finally done it. Even things like address and phone numbers, but prescription numbers, the drugs they're taking are protected health information. And as a pharmacy worker, you have limited rights to look at that information, whether you're a pharmacist or a pharmacy technician. The only information you're allowed to get from about a patient, really, is related to a current prescription that you're filling. You go back through and check to see when the last time the prescription was filled. Why? Because insurance companies put restrictions on how often you can fill prescriptions. So you have to check on that. You also go back and take a look at the drugs that a patient is taking. You're looking for the potential for drug interaction. And every drug interacts with something. And drugs that interact together are complicated. Some of your patients are going to be on many drugs. If you look at a patient taking one drug, well, you're not terribly worried about interactions, but are you? You are, because we don't keep and prescription drugs. They say, what drug do you and over the counter meds? Probably a good idea, even if of what you take, because some people will take quite a few. But a lot of people will be on drugs. My wife had a patient, and as a home health physical therapist, the first professional visiting a home health patient has to gather information on 35 patients to get a patient started. And one of those pages is a list of the drugs. Which used to be what used to deal with a lot of and Medicare patients. And some of them had quite a few drugs. So a list of that's correct. Didn't have any identified. Patient was taking 28 separate prescription medications. Yeah, well, some people need it. But I took a look at that list, and he was taking 3 different antidepressants. Yeah, no. I heard that. Yeah, it is not normal. In fact, those drugs are actually dangerous.
Is that simply because somebody didn't know what medicines are on?
Probably. And the different physicians are going to be a relatively benign case. One time when my mother was still alive, we had a number of hospitalizations. Hey, she was being treated at Walter Reed Air Force. My dad, he was a World War, my mother was a World War II vet, and my dad was a Air Force. So, she got her care there, and they were living outside the city. And I went in to visit her. I used to regularly go visit the FDA. So and when I did, I'd simply go visit my mother. She was in the hospital. Of course, because that's important. I walked in, and I'm nosy. So I looked at her medication, and she had had surgery, and they were not feeding her. They were feeding her. Hope nobody heard of them. She couldn't take any food by her son. So when they do that, they put people on acid suppressants so that the stomach itself is not doing damage. So they have her on Zantac, which is an H2 blocker, alternate, and Maalox, which is typical because it works very, very differently. But they also have her on Tagamet, which basically is the same thing as Zantac. And so I looked at that and I went to one of the attending physicians and I said, why? Why is he, I don't understand why you have Maalox here, but why both Zantac and Tagamet? They're effectively the same. And he goes, I don't know. I'll check.
You never want to answer a patient with, I don't know. I will find that.
I wasn't
information
the
out there.
patient.
But anyway.
He was also military. He was captain. So the next time I went up about a week later, one of them was gone. And the reason was that we had two different physicians giving her his favorite drug and not looking at what was on the chart and asking if it was necessary. And that's very typical. I had one student who worked in a nursing home as an aide, and one of her clients, one of her patients, was on 52. And I didn't even think. I blurted out something I probably shouldn't have said, but that's not right. And it is malpractice. So, drugs interact. I mean, if you have taking 2 prescription drugs, you've got 2 interactions. If you're taking 3, you've got 3. If you're taking 4, you've got 6 interactions. The more drugs, the more interactions. And that doesn't even include the things that work together to have another interaction with the other 3rd drug. So what we want to do is look at that. So you can look at a patient record to see if there's any potential for interaction. Or, and you may remember this from the visual superscript, Alicia, certain drugs are not given to women until they're engaged. And they'll alert you on it. So that's one of the things you're looking for. Now the silly part in visual superscript was one of the patients was an 82-year-old woman, and it flagged a drug as being potentially damaging to a fetus, an 82-year-old. So it's kind of, that was a mistake in the system. That one just made me laugh. But it's but on the other hand, we do need to be careful. You can look at that and say, not going to be a problem. Or it might be a 50-year-old woman who's had a double hysterectomy. Not going to be a problem. No, it won't flag a male. So at least it won't do that. Let's take a break, 15 minutes. Pardon? X. X is one that is known to cause birth defects.
I used to know how to do like this, but I haven't used it. I mean, if I practiced it, I would remember.
Yeah,
how
sure,
to-
it'd come back to you. It's like
And I
riding
knew
a
it all in
bicycle.
high school, but I never used it.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, math is one of those things that, if you don't, well, like anything, like a language. We had, we have a friend who, she and her twin sister grew up in Colombia, speaking 4 Spanish plus 4 native languages. Fluently, they had their own private language. And nobody could understand, because they mixed and matched Spanish and these other 4 languages. And they're completely impossible now. They went to school, and they moved back to the States, and they were living in Oregon. And in 2nd grade, they had a teacher who refused to let them speak anything but English. And to this day, neither of them, I mean, they were just really suppressed for the next years. We're not allowed to speak these languages. And they didn't have whatever, I guess they didn't have support of their parents. Yeah, you speak at home, I don't care.
Right.
You know, but they didn't have that support. They lost it. And to this day, even though they were both fluent at age 5 and 6 in Spanish, they can't speak it.
I have a question for you on this discussion. It says to discuss what the penalties were and how much they were charged. I can't find anything on it.
If you,
I even looked it up, what that, because it says at the bottom that they were, yeah, I'll look at it. It says that it was the State of California Department of Health and Public Health and Health and Safety Code 1280. I even looked that up. It doesn't tell me what that means.
Yeah.
I mean, I get a lot of legal jargon, but it doesn't tell me what that means.
all I can say is if you can't get the information, just take it. If the information isn't available,
Well, I can say that they were cited.
right? You don't know. what-
Yeah, I don't know what the pinnacle.
Sometimes you can find that out.
Also with the essay, I wanted to know how they sterilize. I could not find it to save my life. So at the end of it, I did find a lab in New England that sent out medication and it was tainted and people had got influenza. No.
No.
Fungal.
Fungal
Thank you.
meningitis.
Thank you, fungal meningitis. And then I wrote in there what the consequences was and what they did. But I couldn't tell you how they sterilized it because I couldn't find a single thing.
I know, I really struggled with trying to go along with it.
Well, I went with TPN and I wrote what it was in it, who it was used for. Then I found that one lab and what happened and what their consequences were.
Mostly, they will autoclave.
The bags,
Not the bags. The bags are manufactured and sterilized with something like ethylene oxide. And then
see,
they're
and I couldn't
filled
find
under
anything
sterile
like that.
conditions. It's kind of hard to find it. If you can't find all the information,
I just
Don't
wrote
worry.
that, I said, I cannot.
I just, like I said, I just
Yeah.
I wrote what it was, what was in it, where it comes from, and then that one lab. I mean, I didn't know what else to put in there, 'cause I couldn't find any sterilization procedures.
There are several means of sterilization. One is gas, ethylene oxide. Autoclaving is used as much as possible because it's the cheapest. But there is also gamma irradiation. We use that on things that can't be sterilized any other way, but it's small samples. It's also hideously expensive. But there are many ways. One of the best ways, one of the ways to do this, one of the reasons is that no plant sterile processing is a ton of money. I mean, it's very expensive. But a lot of things can't be autoclaved. It's not the plastic bag. Autoclaved. I used to make for our Med 104 class. I used to make my art class. And I just art and mason art.
Well, I did specify that they had to be sterilized because they're going into the body.
Yep. They have to
I
be,
did too.
but you don't necessarily go. how
No.
specific.
I could not find anything on it.
Well, just say that, that's okay.
And then it says, we might have to do documentation, medical record, that MAR, various, so if this one has the MAR, medical record, it would just be this one.
I think so.
This is about the others.
Let's see,
Oh, it's that, I missed that one. So
Always
this one.
miss that, yeah.
Okay.
Always look. You have to be careful, I hate those,
I need those.
but you have to be careful, we use them a lot. So, all right, I'm gonna print out. Also,
I also want to bring me more about.
so here are the worksheets. I apologize if they're not stapled. Yeah, I know. You just
We
have to
only have
use
one
them.
chapter?
There's two of them here.
Oh.
I just decided that was easy. So in, pardon?
I said I was gonna jump up and down for Jordan, that was only one chapter.
No, unfortunately, no.
Well, that's cool, doesn't mean I'm still not hungry, I'm in the fit for full pizza.
Okay. I remind you that read the chapters, work on the workbook, and you can either spend time simultaneously, I guess, trying to do the quiz, or you can just fill out the workbook and then transfer the answers into the quiz, and that will mean that you're done with it. And I'll go through and check, as I say, I'll check it and make sure that it's not ignoring correct answers. But I graded that today and put a grade into the grade book. Yeah. I put it in the grade book for, for the worksheets. Yeah, I did that. Now, conversation we had, asked about missing class. And I understand that people want to take their kids out and maybe go out themselves. Usually late at night, we get the teenagers clean out the candy bar, which is very all right. As I was saying when we came in, you're adults, you get to make up your own mind. It's not considered a valid excuse for missing class.
No.
So, we are having Halloween here. I know in some cases that doesn't mean anything. English child, for instance, he couldn't be left alone in the theater.
One of my.
Yeah. So, but keep in mind that that's your decision. We will be having class. And we'll be talking to some extent about various things that we don't get to tonight.
Can we vote on? So,
Can you vote on a recording?
that was gonna be my question. Yeah.
Well, Amber, you think this is a democracy?
Yeah.
Well, it'll be a very interesting class.
That's not being, that works not being.
I've had that. I've Yeah, I know you
Well, because like I noticed, like she said, there's some people in this class have older kids that are already moved out, and some other people like have younger children. The auditorium. which is,
Yep.
you know,
will. And would be away.
Right.
That
I know my 7-year-old. Well, 7-year-olds will go in there. My 7-year-old, 3-year-old.
No. No, that's what you bring out.
Seriously.
Um,
50-year-old is like,
Yeah.
seriously.
No, I actually, one time, various reasons,
You wanna do that with my kid? I mean, yeah, you could
Would you
totally.
take it?
Yeah, what do you? If you give my kid a hand, he'd totally let you hold him.
There's like a 50-50 chance, if you have candy and juice.
But I've done that before. That's also a story. I have to admit. But nonetheless, we will be having stuff.
Democracy.
Democracy. I'll take it under advisement. I may well do that, we'll see. What I might do is take a vote from the people that are actually here. I know.
Little kid.
I sort of anticipated that would be good.
Saying,
Yeah.
I got to, I mean, my kids are telling me this was a perk.
Yeah. Yeah, I've been there too. I miss-
Yeah, on a holiday.
That's not true, but, maybe. Anyway. So we're gonna plan on classic. The other thing that happens in the pharmacy is we document, when patients receive counseling. Now, as technicians, we cannot counsel patients. We can offer some advice about using the product. But when it comes to medication, counseling is done by the pharmacist only. So, and counseling is when a patient is having trouble with meds or think they are, just need to talk to a pharmacist. We offer all of our patients the opportunity to talk to a pharmacist. Most of our patients use that. We document that refusal. Now, some of this is obviously for liability protection, but others is just to be sure that it's in the records that certain things have happened. And when a pharmacist actually does counseling, they will put in some brief note about that. And again, those are not something that anyone else has a right to look at. So we have to keep that in mind. There are instances, plenty of them, where people have inappropriately gotten into protected health information for a variety of reasons, usually not particularly nice. That's always illegal. It can cost you your job. If you're licensed as a pharmacist, it can cost you your license. And it can get the pharmacy in trouble. The pharmacy is ultimately responsible for all of these. There have been a number of incidents where pharmacies have been heavily fined for the misbehavior of their employees. And you think that the pharmacy shouldn't be fined for that, but the law has made it clear that the pharmacy is responsible for protecting its records. And our training and our procedures manual, that's another part of it. All pharmacies have those procedures manual. And you have to know the contents of that when you're working. You have to follow the procedures. But if you don't, the pharmacy is responsible. And some pharmacies have got some pretty heavy fines for these sorts of things. So, and in reality, that's part of this week's, yeah, bless you. Part of this week's assignment base is looking at the HIPAA violations. Computer systems for pharmacy. But documentation is important because we need to see what the care for the patient is. Documentation has always been an issue in this country because documentation is at a doctor's office. If you happen to be someplace else and get ill or injured and require medical, it's very, very difficult to get of what your current care is. You might remember, or you might be unconscious and not be able to tell people what you need. Or that you have, say, you're a diabetic. In this country, that documentation has been addressed to some extent. Health Information Protection and Accountability Act. Part of that law is that if you change position, they have to transfer your records, and they will do so. But we have a multitude of medical records systems. You've all, well, if you haven't, you will be taking medical documentation classes and coding and billing and everything else. But what you don't know is that there are dozens of different software that are available, and they don't necessarily communicate. And part of that is because anytime you have systems that can talk to each other, you have the risk of exposure of data to people who don't have the right. It's taken a long time. One of the reasons that we have a lot of problems with opiates and people getting opiates is that for a long time, all people did was go in, they would go from ER to ER to ER getting prescriptions. And then they'd go to different pharmacies to fill them. Or they have them filled at the hospital. And so they'd walk out with a supply of drugs that they shouldn't have. So now we have some limited sharing of information. So if you go to MCR in Public ER now, complaining of extreme back pain, you claim that you fell and went to the back, and get a prescription for oxycodone. And then run up the road to Cougar Valley here in Fort Collins to do the same thing. They're going to be able to find out that you just left MCR. All right, doesn't matter. You're right. Okay, let's look at going to E, which is under Better Health. Okay, they still talk to each other.
Right.
So they can find out. And there's some limited. If you go to, if you are also pharmacy shopping, they're getting better. I mean, it used to be if you went from Walgreens to Walgreens, they said, wait a minute. You just left the one, 5 miles away. So it wouldn't do anything. But now, even if you go from Walgreens to King Soopers to Safeway, they can find out. So we're getting better, but it's been a very, very difficult thing to do. Simply because everyone was afraid of that data being shared inappropriately. And that's not an unreasonable concern with computer systems. And now, a lot of our systems are relying on cloud storage. And even though I keep hearing how secure cloud storage is, I look back at 150 million records being hacked out of Equifax or Experian, a year and a half, 2 years ago. And you would think that a credit reporting agency would have very, very secure data. And they don't. So computer systems can be hacked. And that's been a concern that a lot of people have had with sharing of records. However, if we look at what's good for the patient, let's take a trip across the Atlantic Ocean to France. In France, they have what they call a smart card. And a smart card looks like a credit card. France has a structured medical system essentially identical to us. Doctors are independent contractors with hospital privileges. They have their own practices. They're very separate from one another. Specialists are the same way. Everything is set up pretty much along the same lines we are, with one exception. They have a single payer system. The government is the clearinghouse for all insurance payments. Everyone in France has a smart card. The smart card contains their entire medical record. And the smart card goes with you. Credit card. If you are from, Nice on the Mediterranean coast, and you're visiting family in Paris, and you have an accident, all they do is take your smart card, swipe it through a reader, and they have permission from the reader. Swipe it through a reader, and they know exactly your medical history. They know what drugs you're taking. They know what surgeries you've had. They know everything about you. So care becomes unified. Whereas in this country, I just went to the East Coast to visit my father. If I had to be hospitalized there, they would have had very little idea of my medical history. Now, my medical history is Clinton, but nonetheless, they would have no idea. If I were on medication, they're likely to take me off all my medication and put me on the medicine they want, which is not good for the patient. So we don't have a good system. There are systems that work, but the documentation has to be there. There are ways of doing this that work very well, such as smart cards, and there are ways that are improving. If you are a Kaiser client, for instance, they have probably, from my investigation, the best medical record and a documentation system in the country. You go to a Kaiser office anywhere in the United States, and they can pull up your medical record. All you have to do is show them your Kaiser card. Other systems might be able to do that if you can find someone who takes your insurance. So the issue is the documentation is critical to proper medical care. A number of years ago, it was a standing joke that on October 1st, the entire country had to go to only electronic health records, EHR. The joke part of it was that it was October 1st, they had because every year That hasn't happened yet. Theoretically, it's not EHR, but the expense of converting to EHR is out of range of many medical. We think of doctors as making a lot of money. They also have big debts. They have huge liabilities. And unless they happen to be high level specialists of the neurosurgeon, they don't make that much money. Yeah, they're not strong, but they're certainly not becoming multi-millionaires on their practice. So they can't afford it. So we have yet to see the full implementation of electronic health records. One of the certifications that we offer here, of course, is EHR specialist. And it's actually a pretty good one to have. Documentation now is mostly in computers. It used to be that doctors would handwrite their notes, and a medical transcriptionist would then type them up. Then doctors started dictating their notes, and a medical transcriptionist would type them up. Okay. Now everything is on a computer. When I go in for my annual physical, in walks the RN that works with my physician with a laptop. She's got my records right there. Everything we talk about, she just types in. Doctor comes in, pulls up that record, types in a few more things, and the records are complete. And it's all computerized. So we don't have legibility issues. We don't have garbling on recorded tapes because people talk badly. And we have all of this ways of improving, but it still is all dependent on the people entering the data. Okay. The thing we need to remember is that when we have access to patient data in a pharmacy or in a medical office, our future decisions about care for the patient depend on the previous documentation. So it needs to be accurate. And it needs to be concise in that you're not writing a novel about your patient. There are also legal issues that documentation help us with. Mainly, I remember a number of years ago, my wife was working in North Carolina. She worked in a hospital. A young man was born with a major injury. He was boat racing, flipped his boat, and he was a high-level paraplegic. So physical treated him following all the standard physical therapy protocols at the time, documented everything. I can't compete with a cookie. And 5 years later, he got a call from the hospital. Now, 5 years later, she was now in home health, working not in Raleigh, but in Chapel Hill, North Carolina, so about 25 miles away. Got a call from the hospital. This kid was suing the hospital, the race organizers, the manufacturer of the boat, the manufacturer of the safety equipment, just everybody in sight. And when suing the hospital, since they waited until about a week before the statute of limitations ran out, they named everybody that had anything to do with it, including my wife. Now, long story short, she had to give a deposition. Depositions were never fun. I've had to do a number of them over the years. Of course, her lawyer, the hospital's lawyer was with her. But what got her thrown out of the case was the fact that she had documented everything she did, and all of it was up to the standard of care for that kind of injury at the time. The documentation kept her out of court and kept her from being potentially victimized in a lawsuit. Now, ultimately, the jury, this is North Carolina, they don't tend to be real liberal when they threw it out. The jury just said, you shouldn't have been racist. Do that. But nonetheless, caused a lot of anxiety. But again, the documentation was clear. And that's one of the reasons that we try to keep it. It doesn't matter if you're working in a pharmacy or a home health agency or a medical office. Documentation is critical to all of these things. It's also critical for billing and reimbursement of expense. Most patients don't pay for their prescriptions with cash. Most patients have some sort of insurance. Many will be on Medicare. 80% of our drugs are taken by Medicare patients. Okay, to be clear about that. So that is all done in the pharmacy. The reimbursement is done electronically. The application, the submission. Sometimes they're rejected, and you try again. And as a technician working in a pharmacy, all of this stuff is part of your responsibility. It's just billing and documentation. So if regularly, our records get audited, and they could be audited by the home office of whoever owns our pharmacy. Walgreens, of course, has a home office, as do all the others. And they will regularly audit each pharmacy to be sure that their documentation is up. The state may also choose to audit records. We use a point system to grade our facilities, whether they're hospitals or pharmacies or whatever, to show how thoroughly we're taking care of all of this. We talked about HIPAA. And the pharmacist care claim form for anything that's done. Pharmacies do more than just fill prescriptions. Pharmacies have contracts often with nursing homes to provide medications and to provide medication monitoring services for the homes. Part of that, remember when I said that they should. This is probably the fault of the nursing home, but they should have a pharmacist that consults with them to go through what they call medication review. And a pharmacist coming in and looking at that list was thrown out. And that list was pared down. Because what happens, unfortunately, and this is another way to get over it, is medication is not side effects. So we need drugs for the side effects. Many antidepressants, for instance, will, after you take them for some period of time, you'll start showing symptoms that look like Parkinson's. Well, my solution to that is trying the drug. Get them off that drug and try it. The standard solution is to give them antiparkinson's drug, even though it's not Parkinson's. because it's caused by the drug. Those drugs have side effects. So we keep adding drugs on to take care of the side effects of others. Instead of going through and saying, let's review this. And when you do that, lazy, lazy. We are a treater of symptoms. We don't cure disease, we treat symptoms. That's one of the problems. You go into the doctor's office and you have signs and symptoms. You know, so we have signs and symptoms. The signs and symptoms are syndrome. And that's associated, that's again associated with disease. So you treat those symptoms. You don't look for the underlying cause. Because it's difficult to find. Often very difficult. A lot of things can only be treated symptomatic. Rheumatoid arthritis, is still kind of a mystery. So we treat the symptoms. Now, sometimes we treat the symptoms to help you relieve. Your child has an ear infection and a high fever. We treat the fever. So the fever is dangerous. It is too high. Causes problems. So we treat that. Then we give a drug to cure the infection, like killing microorganisms. So we can mix those. But most of the time, it's okay, well, they don't want to take the time to say, okay, let's get off this drug and try a different drug. Because they decided the drug they're on is working. And sort of the, syndrome, but it is a drug because it's causing the problem. So we treat symptoms. We don't cure disease. Now, some doctors argue strongly that we cure disease, but no. And that's where you go in. We do that. In some things we can. I mean, we're talking about curing cancer. Nobody's ever cured. Their cancer becomes inactive and might stay inactive the rest of their natural life. And hopefully it does. But, tell you a story. Number of years ago in England, a patient was given a kidney transplant. The donor was a woman who had been killed in an automobile accident the day before. And it was kidney. So the kidney was transplanted into the patient. 2 days later, she developed melanoma. It spread rapidly and she died. The surgeon got mad and said, what happened? And so she started looking into it. It turns out that the donor, the woman who had been killed in the automobile, had melanoma 15 years and been cured, had been disease-free for 15 years. But we're never free of that disease or any other form of cancer. We always have to. Our bodies usually keep it fresh. Our immune system. And melanoma is an immune-modified disease. So, surgeon said, what happened to the other kidney? And just in terms of so he called the doctor, get it out. And the guy already so he finds it. But they got me. But so it's something to remember. And the only reason she found that out is because the woman was Scottish. In Scotland, they have one of the best cancer databases in the world. They keep those records. Her immune system kept it down. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, as I said, melanoma is immune modified. So her immune system was keeping it suppressed. But that's all, just suppressed. Yeah. That's why some people will go through multiple rounds. We've got a very close friend right now who's going through her third round of breast cancer. And she goes 5 or 6 years between those rounds. And we put a 5-year, at the 5-year time limit, we say, oh, they're cured. We're learning that that isn't true. So records saved the second transplant patient in this particular case. Being able to find those. And those are critical. That's why we keep them. The other thing we have to document is controlled substance. Controlled substances are really something that really came into existence. I mean, all the drugs were there. Controlled substances are drugs which cause dependence, addiction and dependence problems. And in 1970, during the Richard Nixon administration, we created the Drug Enforcement Agency, which set up 5 schedules of controlled substances. So those 5 schedules were in order of 2 things: medical use and addiction potential. And here's where we use Roman numerals. So Schedule 1 is drugs that have very high addiction potential and no accepted medical. So crack cocaine, heroin. And I know this is controversial. Okay. LSD, mescaline, peyote. All of these things. The list is very, very long. If you do a web search of Schedule 1 substances, you'll get a drug. Many of which are not available anywhere that you haven't heard of. But they're there because people have used them. And they are available often in various places. So high addiction potential. No accepted use. Schedule 2, high addiction. Medical use. Schedule 2 includes morphine, oxycodone, hydrocodone, methylphenidate, Ritalin, the amphetamines. These are all Schedule 2 substances. Schedule 2 substances that are requiring documentation. We have to store descriptions of Schedule 2 substances separately from everything else. We cannot refill a Schedule 2 prescription. Every time someone comes in with a need for those, it has to be fresh. You cannot refill a Schedule 2 substance. That's illegal. Now, I said hydrocodone. Up until about 3 years ago, hydrocodone was Schedule 3. But it moved to Schedule 2. because it's a major social problem. Still is. But then you can still go. But when it was a schedule two, those reclassified. I also think turnover. People say it's not. Percocet. Pardon? Percocet, I think is three. Maybe. It's a schedule.
I would definitely put that in the two because if that and Vicodin, like those are the
Well, if I could do it now, schedule.
yeah, now, but like, those,
Oh, no. I mean, the VA used to give guys at a time. They can't do that anymore. So there's that, and you have to account for every dose, one by one. So if you, and you have to do this every 2 years, for the federal government. You have to account for every single dose. Meaning, if you've ordered 1,000 Vicodin, if you can, and you have um, the restrictions are pretty on that, and they're very, very quick to penalize the pharmacy violation. The Schedule 3 includes things like Tylenol and sodium and a few other drugs. Schedule 3, 4, and 5 are decreasingly addictive, all of which have medical uses. Schedule 3, as I said, your Schedule 4 includes things like Valium, a number of other drugs.
I think value should be up.
Yep, but, pharmaceutical outlets are keeping that. Tramadol, I think, is a Schedule 4. It is, for a long time, it wasn't Schedule. Yeah. It is. That has been quite well done. It's Tramadol. It's an opiate analog that was developed for to be non-addictive. Claimed to be non-addictive, but it is. People take it up. And so it is now scheduled. It's not high. Schedule 5 is things like your coffee, things with small amounts of codeine. And most of those are over the counter. And now we restrict the amount that people can buy. Teenagers are going in and buying 5 or 6 bottles of night and getting high on it. Yeah.
What?
Can't imagine how sick you get.
I can see getting drunk on night, but I couldn't see getting high. I can see getting high on psilocybin.
That's a different kind of reaction. Yeah, some people do it. My wife goes.
That's why they put it as a prescription.
It's like behind the car. You know why they're behind the counter?
Because people are making under 16.
Yeah.
All the stuff.
They're making meth.
No.
It's a starting material for meth.
No.
You better. A number of years ago, they keep track.
Keep track of it, yeah.
A number of years ago, when my wife and I were up for a week of summer vacation. And she started reacting very badly to some power that was there. Well, we forgot her too. We have to, I used to work for the company with me. So I used to have a ton of stuff. Not really. Yeah, not really. But we forgot to bring you with us when we were out. So I went down in Winter Park at that time. The only pharmacy was Safeway and Fraser, about 5 miles. And so I went there, walked in, summertime. I walked in, I went to the store. I walked back to the pharmacy, and there's a pharmacist. So he looked kind of happy because he was kind of lonely. So I started talking to him. I said, I need some food. He said, okay. Once I talked to him, he said, how much you smoke? And he said, well, nobody.
Well, no.
So, because I didn't eat. So I got to talk to him because at that time I was already teaching. I was teaching pharmacy. I said, so is this working to have a fine county or just stopping people? Not really.
It just makes more work for the farm.
Well,
It's all the-
more work, the paperwork, I don't know, a lot of paperwork.
Well,
to
you can
identify,
still
but-
sell it.
But what happens is the meth guy will pay somebody, $5 a pack of cigarettes, go buy a box, so they can get 50 people to do that and get 50 boxes of food, which then they process in the meth. So he said, no, it really isn't working. I just have a lot more customers buying stuff. So, but we are dealing with these issues, and more drugs are going behind the counter. We restrict sales of like NyQuil and Dayquil and stuff like that because kids were buying large amounts of it to get high. I hate this stuff anyway.
Because the alcohol,
Yeah.
just like how you have to be at a certain age to buy freaking super glue and spray paint
And white owl.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
White?
Yeah, white owl.
Yeah,
I think
they
the top there.
short
And the rubber
and small.
cement, the rubber cement. Or something like that. Yeah.
Drinking?
People are getting so retarded with like what they have to do to get drugs nowadays. Like, you don't need to do it for real. Like marijuana is legal. Just go to weed.
Well, but you can see what the issues are. I mean, people are buying these and destroying their brains. We gradually get them. But anyway, so with controlled substances, most pharmacists will never. Do you have a question? Okay. Less addiction, even, less, and even less. I mean, that's really what it boils down to. It's a declining scale. There's no really, you can't put an addiction value of 1 or 2 or 3 on addiction. It's just what is the levels of dependence. Valium was always when it was first marketed in the 60s. And then it became Mother's Little Help. Mother's Little Help. Okay? And that's what it became. Actually, there's a book called The Valley of the Dolls, which was about the valley area of LA and the wealthy upper middle class women who lived on the Gulf, and they called it the Gulf. It was made into an absolutely wretched movie, but the book itself was quite well received because it told really what was going on with these people, and it led to ultimately this stuff being classified as schedule. Now, what you'll see, by the way, on the label of a bottle of a scheduled substance, you'll see the label, and in sort of a gray out, you'll see a C with, say, a Roman numeral, and that means that it's controlled class 2. Every scheduled substance should have a C and a Roman numeral on the label. So, on the stockpile, not necessarily, but on the stockpile. Okay, you'll see that in the pharmacy. They're to be stored separately from other drugs. Schedule 2 substances have to be locked up. Most pharmacies will lock up most of the scheduled drugs. They'll keep placing them in places that cannot be picked up casually. And really, that's all of your prescription drugs are going to be behind that counter and unavailable. But the so we have all of these. We have to keep our records. We report to the federal government every 2 years. But pharmacists don't wait 2 years to do their inventory. Because if you have something that's missing, is stealing your drugs. Yeah, they're not going to do that. In fact, most pharmacies will do this, and bigger pharmacies will basically inventory. That there's a mix of physiological and neurological of these drugs.
It's only a 10 milligrams, but it makes me like I'm good part of the night, and then like in the morning when I wake up, I feel like I almost have a hangover. Absolutely not.
Yeah, that's a neurological effect of the drug. It's not, different people react. People who take a lot of these things.
Right, it doesn't.
Well, they also, as soon as they start feeling the nausea, they pop another.
Right, and then that's when they can get to it.
Right. Right. And guess what's the fastest growing opiate addicted population in the country? Medicare. Yeah. The older you get, the more likely you are to have chronic pain. Instead of dealing with chronic pain, physicians give people opiates.
That's what
And
makes
they
me like
get
not want to
addicted.
take it.
Right?
Being sick, and I not want to take
Well,
it.
then you're allergic to the drug. Vicodin contains hydrocodone and so can you take Tylenol? Good for you.
I can't.
But you're allergic to one of the components of that. Okay, if you take Percocet, it's not going to be Percocet. Well, you're probably allergic to hydrocodone. So don't take it. I mean, I would say anytime someone wants to give you an opiate, I tell them that you get a rash. or with like,
That's what I told him. They tried giving me like one for my back and so like gave me oxygen.
yeah, yeah, which is a stronger opiate, but there's no acetaminophen.
Right.
So, yeah. So we have to report this. We have to report to every 2 years to the government, to the DEA. Our control substance sales. We have to account for everything. Schedule 1, you should never see. Those are so, no man can use them very, very carefully. But you might work with schedule 2 substance. But we have to report that. And then we have to keep the records for 2 years. In some states, require 5 years. But since the reporting requirements for Schedule 2 are so stringent, most pharmacies will do at least weekly inventories and reconciliation of reports, or they will sometimes, if they're big pharmacies, they might be. The hospitals used to be a place where there were really problems. Medical people are more likely to be drugs, because they're exposed to them. They have access. Before hospitals really centralized all their pharmacy operations, they used to have branch pharmacies and medicine cabinets on every floor. And those often would have drugs stolen out by the medical personnel there. So we've really tried to do what we can to prevent that kind of thing. Let's see. So we have special forms from the DEA that we have to fill out. So we document all of those. And if we find that drugs have been are missing, we have to file a report as soon as possible, or we can be held liable for those drugs going missing. And we can lose if anyone who is licensed to prescribe or dispense controlled substances have a DEA registration number. And it's a structured number. You can't just make it up. And you can lose that. And when you lose the ability to prescribe or dispense, that's a big chunk of revenue. When Vicodin before Vicodin was a Schedule 2 substance, Vicodin and its generic analog sold well over 150 million prescriptions a year. It still sells a lot, but it's no longer the biggest selling drug in the country because it's not controlled. Let's see. Not much else I want to say. Questions? Okay. So another thing that we do is we invoice, we order. We have to keep records of all of our drugs that we order. And we do that for accounting purposes. But we also do that to keep a record of how much drug we're going through. Because drugs are expensive to pharmacies too. And most pharmacies buy their drugs through wholesale. And there are about 250 wholesalers in the United States. Most of them are local and regional, but there are a few national. So most pharmacies will buy through wholesale. Wholesale is expected to be paid. And the usual terms are net fully paid, meaning you have to pay for each order within 30 days. So what that means is you need to know how much drug you're gonna need on your shelf. Which is why sometimes you go into a pharmacy and they're out of the drug you want. Because they sold more of it than they expected.
Who's strong with that? But pharmacist.
The pharmacy tech monitors and prepares a list for the pharmacy to approve. And then the pharmacy tech gets the order. And controlled substances have to be signed for by the pharmacy. But other than that, the tech receives them, logs them in, does a lot of work. But what happens is, of course, you, two things are expensive, the drugs and the space disposal. So what we do, what most pharmacies do, is they will look at how much drug they sell, and their goal is to keep approximately a 1 month supply. Because they order regularly. And if you're running out, you can put an order into a pharmacy and you'll have it. If you really need it, you can have it in an hour. If you're in an urban area. If you're out in the middle of the boonies, like Wood Park or Hot Sulphur Springs or someplace like that, it might take 24 hours. But you can get drugs fairly quickly. The wholesalers have stock. Wholesalers will keep lots and lots of drugs on the shelf. There you go. So you can order these things, but you have no place to put it. So what we do is we keep records so we know our rate of going through. And this changes all the time. Because of course the demographics for every pharmacy are constantly changing. But nonetheless, we can guess that we're going to sell so much, say, Nexium over the course of the next month, and we'll keep that rate. So we usually also have minimum and maximum amounts that we'll have on the shelf. We try not to run out, but it happens. And then you have a choice: find another pharmacy, or have your pharmacy order the drug. Or with the Walgreens, they might say, well, if you go to Walgreens up here, they have it. Or King Super will say the same thing, go to the other one in town, they'll have it. So that's one of the things that, one of the reasons we also maintain a running inventory that we monitor. We also keep a record of payment. Most of the time, you go in and buy your drug, you pay on the spot. You know, you pay. A lot of pharmacies offer pay. If you're out in a small pharmacy, your pharmacy is probably going to be willing to bill you at the moment. If you keep a record of those collections. Okay. But you know, around here, I like having forget it. You know? Yeah, it used to be. I mean, I was a kid, you know, we didn't have the Walgreens, a drugstore. There was no cabinet stuff like that. But and the druggist, the pharmacist, knew everybody in town. I mean, I lived in a small town. They knew everybody in town. They knew where to see you if you were in town. You know? And you might not be able to get to that. So we have a lot of, if you look at it, so any other questions that anyone has? Okay. If you're working in a hospital pharmacy, you won't be involved in billing. You have a billing department. So you don't worry about it. But you do have to watch inventory. Okay. See you guys, well, hopefully, see some of you guys on
See you
LinkedIn.
Monday.
Pardon? Oh, yeah. Okay. Okay, Bella and Larissa, send me an email telling me that you have watched this this presentation or this video. Then you'll get credit for attendance.